Hello and welcome to Thought for the Day from St Peter's, Bexhill, where we're on part 11 of our stories from the Bible. And this is another one of those that's complete in itself, and it raises some interesting issues about doing the small things in life. It's called The Helpful Servant. Are you sitting comfortably? Naaman was a soldier, not just any soldier, but the commander of the whole Syrian army. He was a very powerful man, but he was afraid. Naaman, you see, was ill, and no one knew how to make him well. His skin was covered with sores, and he couldn't feel his fingers or his feet. Everyone felt sorry for him, and God felt sorry too. So God whispered to a little girl who had been captured by Naaman's army and carried away from God's promised land. She worked for Naaman's wife, and one day she said to her mistress, "Back in Israel, where I come from, there lives a man called Elisha. God uses him to make sick people well. If only Naaman could go and see him." And so before long, the great soldier who had fought against God's people was off to seek help from God's prophet. Naaman didn't go alone, of course. He took his servants and his horses and a great chariot full of treasure to reward Elisha in case his cure should work. It was a grand parade, and Naaman expected a grand greeting in return. But when he sent one of his men to knock on Elisha's door, the prophet did not even answer. Instead, he told his servant to say, "If you want to be well, go and dip yourself 7 times in the Jordan River." Now it may be that Naaman was tired and frustrated, or it may be simply that he was proud. Whatever the reason, the prophet's message made him very angry. "The Jordan River," he shouted, "it's little and filthy. I'd throw myself into any river back in Syria, but I will not stick one toe in the Jordan or take the advice of a man who cannot even be bothered to meet me." "Begging your pardon, sir," mumbled one of Naaman's servants, "but if the prophet had sent you off to do something hard, you would have gone straight away, wouldn't you?" "Of course," grunted Naaman, "any soldier would." "Well then, why can't you go and do something easy, like washing in the river? It can't hurt, and it might just work." Naaman sighed, "All right," and led his men to the river. He dipped himself twice. Nothing. He dunked himself twice more. His skin was as ugly as ever. Twice more, and still no cure. Naaman was getting angry again. But when he came up for the 7th time, spluttering and shaking the water from his face, Naaman's men let out a great cheer. Naaman opened his eyes and looked at his hands. The sores were gone from all over his body. Naaman dressed and hurried back to Elisha's house. The prophet himself answered the door this time, and Naaman could not contain his joy. "Take this treasure, take all of it," Naaman begged, "for you have saved my life." But Elisha said, "No, for it was God, after all, who had healed Naaman." "All right then," said Naaman, scooping up a pile of earth. "Let me take this with me, so that I can stand on a piece of your land and worship your God too." Elisha nodded and smiled. And God smiled too, for with a little girl and a muddy river, he had turned an enemy into a friend. Amen.